Andrew. Today, I'm gonna show you the life and theory of John Watson and on how this man contributed to the world of psychology.
John B. Watson, or known as John Brutus Watson, the father of behaviorism, born on January 9, 1878, in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. His parents were Pickens Butler and Emma Watson. John Watson's childhood was not a typical childhood. His mother, Emma, was a religious woman, and so she named John after a Baptist minister, and she hoped that John would grow up and preach the gospel, but it did not turn out as planned. While John's father, an alcoholic, left his family when John was 13 to live with two other women. The family was left in poverty. And Emma sold the family farm and they moved to Greenville, South Carolina. John met different people and started to view the world with a psychologist mindset. But despite of his early experience, he continued and go to college. Watson was not a very good student. His mother, Emma, even assisted him in gaining admission to the Furman University. He completed his classes but did not particularly excel. Some instructors even considered him as insubordinate. However, Watson supported himself financially and graduated his master's degree at age 21. Then, Watson decided that he must continue his education. Watson's study and work in psychology began at University of Chicago, where he began developing what would come to be called behaviorism.
Now, let's go to the significant contribution of John B. Watson to psychology. John B. Watson created the School of Behaviorist Methodology within the psychology, and he published his views on the psychological theory in 1913. The article was entitled "The Psychological as the Behaviorist Views It." It's commonly considered as manifesto on behaviorism. The article outlined of behaviorism as the objective branch of science that will base its theories and findings on experimental research using observable data. One goal of the behaviorism was to understand how certain behaviors develop as consequences of conditioning the external stimuli.
In behaviorism, there are two types of conditioning. First is the operant conditioning. Subject learns behavior by associating it with consequences. Second one is the classical conditioning. Subject learns to associate two unrelated stimuli with each other. And operant conditioning can also be used to decrease a behavior via the removal of a desirable outcome or the application of a negative outcome. For example, a child may be told they will lose recess privileges if they talk out of turn in class. This potential for punishment may lead to a decrease in disruptive behaviors. In classical conditioning, this happens when a conditioned stimulus is no longer paired with an unconditioned stimulus. For example, when the bell was repeatedly rung and no food presented, Pavlov's dog gradually stopped salivating at the sound of the bell. Little Albert's study. one of the famous experiments of John Watson. With the Little Albert's experiment, Watson applied the process of classical conditioning to program a baby boy afraid of a lab rat. It is demonstrated by Pavlov on how conditioning can trigger biological responses that are inherited genetically. Watson then hypothesized that we can instill new behaviors that were not inherited. To conduct the experiment, Watson and his assistant, Rosalie Kainer, placed the boy in a room where a white rat was allowed to roam around. First, the boy did not fear the rat. Then, Rosalie struck a steel bar with a hammer. Every time Albert reached out to touch the rat, that causes Albert to cry and feared the rat. Eventually, Albert tried to get away from the rat, illustrating that he had been conditioned to fear the rat. Weeks later, Albert showed distress towards any furry object, showing that his conditioning had not only been sustained but also generalized. In Little Albert, he used loud noises to condition a baby to be fearful of white rats or other similar neutral stimulus. Watson found out that such fears could be unlearned through exposure to the feared object and learn new associations between stimuli.
John Watson believed that the principles of behaviorism could use to shape babies into anything. For example, a scientist, a merchant, or anything you want. He famously said, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and my specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any specialist. I might select a doctor, a lawyer, artist, merchant, and yes, even a beggar man, and a thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, and race of his ancestors."
This quote routinely appears in introductory texts in education and psychology and is used to illustrate the radical environmental views of behaviorists.
I am going beyond my facts, and I admit it, but so have the advocates to the contrary, and they have been doing it for thousands of years.
This second sentence is rarely quoted with the first sentence. In taking this quote out of context, authors have presented Watson and classical behaviorism as having an extreme perspective on the importance of environment. However, Watson was reacting to the work of other psychologists and educators who believed that heredity was solely responsible for human development and learning. Early behaviorists accented the role of environment, but their views were probably not as radical as extreme as they are often presented.